Hi, this is Gecko Mayhem. This is another Godforge video. I've got a great video for you today, but unfortunately, when I recorded it, my PC was playing up a bit, and I've been unable to salvage any video. However, I hope you enjoy it, just without me. We just had a great video drop from Simon, the recognizable face of Fateless. He talked about the upcoming alpha test, the team's shift to a different way of testing the game before release, and why they're going with this tower experience that will involve as much of the community as possible. I'll play through parts of the video and then address everything that's covered. Let's get into it.
So ultimately what's going to happen for this kind of like alpha wave, we've got about 40,000 people signed up right now. We want to get all of those people through the experience if we can. That's the first thing. So our proposal is to have internally this kind of like breakdown of the game mode is ready by the end of May, which is kind of like our original plan. We then have some internal like friends and family testing periods to make sure we understand how quickly we can beat the tower. We understand the kind of different mechanics. Does it feel good? Does it feel right? We then go into like a second phase of that. That's basically going to be a phase 1 and a phase 2 of that right the way through June. And then from July, we're expecting to bring the first group of community players in the mix. And the way we're going to have it is 3 different alpha waves, okay? So wave 1, ideally, is going to be a big chunk, like maybe even as much as half of the pre-signed up players. Obviously, you signed up to a beta. It's basically, we're calling it an alpha now. But half of that group of players will receive emails to say, come and join wave 1. That's going to last about 10-11 days is what we're proposing here. We then have this period of time where we take all of that feedback on. We're doing bug fixes, we're doing some tweaks to the build, all that type of stuff. But then wave 2 to come in, which will be towards the end of July. We do the same thing. We run the same length of time for that build, and we get another chunk of time to do any refinements. And then there will be a third wave. And the third wave, we're thinking to open out to anybody who's been involved so far. So if you want to go again and try and beat your first experience, learn from everyone else who's done some runs, you can come again. Now the idea here, so that could be up to 40,000 players. We know from experience that not everyone who's signed up is actually going to participate. So maybe it'll be like a 50 to 70% of those players will actually participate. And we're thinking to have a leaderboard system running on hellhades.com and fateless.gg, basically showing the community's positioning in that experience. So,
okay, there's a lot to take in. Lots of signups means lots of data, even if not everyone who signed up plays. I'm not sure what percentage of signed up players normally take part in game tests, but I would imagine that for everyone who does go through the experience, the developers will just be constantly collecting data without the need for manual feedback. It sounds like they've got the timing all sorted in terms of dates, but remember, this is always subject to change. If something unforeseen comes up during the 2 phases that they're holding in June, the internal friends and family phases, it could push the experience back beyond their predicted start date. So I guess we just wait and see in terms of the actual date for the alpha tower release for those that have signed up. Running the alpha in waves is a good idea. It will allow different people to enjoy the experience, and it'll provide them with 2 pools of separate data and then a third pool with a whole lot more data. The third wave is going to be where hopefully a lot of the original testers from wave 1 do come back to try it and do even better the second time around. Try to beat their score kind of thing. Having a leaderboard turns this into a competition. They already mentioned that in the recent podcast. I think it's pretty cool that they'll have the leaderboard up for everyone to see. And utilizing existing tools definitely makes sense for this. It just goes to show how much the team cares about the community and community input, as spinning it as a competitive task or a competitive mini game is incentive to get as many people as possible putting in the greatest effort that they can. When you are facing off against other people and you're trying to beat these other people that are in the community doing the same thing as you, you're going to put in a little bit of time, and that's going to provide some great data for the team.
So what does the experience look like? Let's just go through that quickly. And whilst we're doing that, I'm just going to show you a couple of cheeky little things that are popping into build to try and distract you. But anyway, so on the hero roster screen, which will be fully accessible throughout the kind of alpha experience, you'll be able to take the hero that you want to upgrade, and you'll be able to go into the upgrade button and take them up through levels. So you will get from the tower, you will get drops which enable you to upgrade your heroes. That will include any like food champions that you would need as drops. That would include any of the kind of currency that you would need to be able to actually upgrade their experience. So anything to level them up will come as drops from certain floors in the tower. The higher you get up to those towers, when you get to one of those levels that drops experience, the better the experience return will be.
So we know a bit more now about what this experience is going to look like. Finally, we're going to be able to play around in the hero screen. Of course, we'll have to build a roster before we can scroll through any heroes, but just knowing that this function will be there for the alpha is very cool, as we've been looking at this hero screen for the last few Fateless videos, just looking as he scrolls through and shows whatever heroes. So the tower is going to be a self-contained area that meets all your needs. You'll get the heroes you need, as well as gaining XP as you claw your way up. You'll be able to level up food to make your chosen heroes stronger, and you'll get all of the resources and items you would need to progress an account. Everything here makes sense.
What we're thinking here is the tower is almost like a mini game in itself. And a few people have asked, will this tower be, on launch? Will this tower be like a feature? There will be a tower on launch, okay? There will be an experience like this, but what the difference here is all of the drops are around core loop of building heroes, leveling them up, gearing them out, giving them more power in effect. So the full core loop is built on floors of a tower rather than going around all these different areas of the game, which would be the normal experience. So through the tower, you'll be able to get experience. You'll be able to get fodder, champions. You'll be able to get the ability to ascend. All of these things dropping on different floors is what we're thinking. You'll be able to farm, like books or scrolls for us to be able to upgrade materials. So all of that will be accessible through floors of a tower.
Yeah, so equating it to a mini game gives people a bit more of an idea of what to expect, which is good. It's a good analogy to draw. It actually is technically a mini game because it's a game within a game for the purposes of testing, but also giving people an experience or a taste of Godforge as a whole. I like that he mentioned that there is going to be a tower on launch. This has been mentioned before, but it just goes to show they are wisely using resources. They're building a tower to test, but there's going to be a tower in the final product. Perhaps those who take part in the alpha will have a little bit of an advantage in that part of the game when it releases. Being a self-contained area gives the developers a lot more control over what players experience. We'll be able to stop at a floor or a level and farm just what we need to keep progressing. And if you get to a boss floor and you find that you can't beat it, you'll be able to just go back down to an earlier floor to work on gaining some resources, such as books and specific heroes, to get stronger and then come back and face off against that boss so that you can continue climbing the tower.
There will also be the opportunity to get armor sets. So different floors of the tower will drop different sets of gear, a bit like if you went into a dungeon and farmed certain gear sets. So you'll be able to find good items to upgrade your heroes. The further you're up in the tower, the better quality of gear will drop. Different floors will have different sets available. So there'll still be that kind of like grind element to the tower, but it'll be over a condensed period of time. Same sort of thing as gear will be weapons. Weapons will drop probably from mini bosses or bosses because they're a big deal. And again, you could go in, it's your decision whether you're going to farm experience, farm gear, farm weapons. All of those things will be in your control to try and progress through the tower as quickly as you can with the resources you're given.
Yeah, so you can tell that they've given this a lot of thought around gear, weapons, items, that kind of thing. Having different item sets drop on different floors really is a bit like a dungeon in an MMORPG or an RPG. It gives people a bit more control over what they aim for and what they farm for. Players will have a real sense of progression as well. As the higher you go, the better the gear that drops. I like that he emphasized that weapons are important. There's a distinction between armor items and weapons will drop from mini-bosses or bosses. I think it gives it a sense of progression, where your characters will feel more powerful if you farm a particular weapon. I also like that there was emphasis over people being in control of what they choose to do. You can go to a floor, you can farm experience, or you can come back and you can try to get these particular items to make your party feel stronger, which is basically what we will expect from the game itself when it releases.
I guess one of the other things which will definitely be up for grabs will be awakening. So heroes drop, and therefore the ability to awaken them to different levels will also drop. It will be like, I don't know, take on one of the bigger bosses or a boss point, not a mini boss, probably a main boss, and you will find a drop table for heroes. And that might be, in this particular level, I've got a chance to get copies of Beowulf or Bastet or, I don't know, Ran. So ultimately, there'll be this drop table of rewards and a percentage chance to get those heroes so that you will be able to go in and take them up to different levels of awakening, which will empower them further. So pretty much anything to make the heroes stronger and the heroes themselves will drop from different levels of the tower. That's the way we're thinking of it right now.
Some really good information here about awakening heroes. Awakening is going to require duplicate champions, and basically we'll be given the opportunity to do this. We will also see on boss levels the basic loot tables of those bosses, or at least the floors that those bosses are on. This will allow people to try to beat RNG, I guess, to get specific good drops that are going to help them to awaken their champions, to get stronger, get more powerful, and be able to conquer the higher levels.
The only thing which won't be available because it wouldn't fit our system would be masteries, and that's going to be something which comes for the full beta. And when we talk beta, that's basically in our minds now like a release of the game. It's like playing early level. It's like being an early adopter of the game. So our thinking has changed with what a beta should be, and it's really from seeing what other games are doing and how they treat it. But a beta will be a very near to finished version of the game, and that will come a bit later now than we originally planned.
They have kind of explained a bit around their thinking behind the whole alpha beta experience thing. Now we know that even those signups for this tower mode were advertised as beta because that was the initial plan. We now know that this experience is being termed an alpha, and beta is going to come further down the track as a kind of early access version of the game. I actually think back to Raid Shadow Legends and its so-called beta, which was in fact an early release of the game back in, well, I started playing in September of 2018, and I don't think the early release had been out that long when I first started playing. Everything that you achieved in this so-called beta, this early access of Raid, it carried through when it went live with the global release in, was it March or April 2019. Sounds like Godforge is going to follow suit with the aim to release a fully playable beta version of the game at a later date, possibly early next year. Although beta itself is being pushed back, I'd say the general vibe around the community for this alpha release tower minigame experience is one of absolute hype and anticipation. People are really looking forward to it. People are talking about it. People want to get in there. They want to check out this tower. They want to check out the game in its confined space that they're building for us. Yeah, really cool. Everyone's looking forward to it.
So for this experience, there will be a good selection of legendary, epic, rare, common and uncommon heroes. You can see obviously a lot of them already starting to come together in game. A lot of them are starting to get animated and VFX and all that type of stuff. So we want for the experience to be like a polished experience of the game. And we're doing a lot of work right now to make sure that that's the case for when you guys get to play the alpha.
Everything's coming together. Everything's being polished. Although the alpha is going to be limited in terms of the space within which you fulfill the core gameplay elements, it is really good, really reassuring to hear that it's going to be a polished experience. A far cry perhaps from many alpha versions you might have experienced if you've ever played the alpha of an upcoming game. It is a different approach for sure, but it's one that feels modern and it feels rewarding. And it's great to be reassured that they're doing so much work towards polishing the game as a whole, and as a result, this alpha experience.
So all you'll do is you'll come to like a Sanctum screen like this, and pretty much the only things that will be available to you would be like the hero screen that I've just been in, to do all of those things around upgrading your heroes. And then in the battle screen, the only one that would not be kind of like grayed out would be the tower, and then you would go in there to complete your content. We're not thinking to have a Godforge because all of the heroes will just come from drops from like a loot table for different levels of the tower.
Yeah, just a brief explanation there of what's going to be available in alpha. It makes sense that we will be locked out from the rest of the game, as the whole purpose of the alpha is for us to test within that specific space, that tower that they're crafting, to gather valuable data.
Some people have asked, is this going to be like a normalized mode, anything like that? That's not the plan. So the plan is because normalized would mean every hero's got the same stats and the same gear and all that type of stuff. We want you to have the experience to fully customize your heroes, to form different teams, to take on different challenges that we lay out for you. And the feedback that we want is what feels good, which combinations are working really well, which heroes feel really strong, perhaps overpowered, which heroes feel particularly weak. Do you feel like the game experience is flowing nicely for you? Do you feel like the combat works well for you? All of those type of different things are really what we're going to be trying to gain from this. And ultimately, it's very similar, I guess, in terms of all of the things that you'd have accessible to our original plan of the beta, but we're doing it more in this kind of like challenge mode, really to make it more fun and accessible for you guys.
Fun and accessible, and it's not being normalized. Great. It would defeat the purpose of a competitive environment and the valuable data that they hope to gather in seeing people's choices and gameplay habits if they did normalize it. Although I suspect they'll encourage people to very specifically provide feedback on their experience, the data that they inherently gather as people simply play is going to provide them with great insights into everything he mentioned around what feels good, what's going to be a bit overpowered, whether things flow well. For example, any sticking points or big hurdles. You might get to a floor and you just can't conquer that floor, and so you farm for a bit and you still can't conquer it even though you strengthen your champions. Is that good flow? Or are you going to just defeat a whole lot of floors in a row when you get to a certain midpoint and all of a sudden you've got this really good team synergy, but you're just knocking everything over and then the boss falls down? And that's not good flow because you haven't provided enough of a challenge. So kind of an even flow, I guess, and everything else that he mentioned there. And yes, I do expect it to be as fun as they're advertising it to be. It sounds like a really cool concept. However, what are we going to get for participating? Surely it's not just the reward of fun.
In terms of rewards, and a lot of people are asking this as well, what do the rewards look like for participating? So we're thinking right now, there will be things like cosmetics which nobody else will be able to get ever again. And that could be as simple as, for your portrait, a border which no one else could get, or an actual portrait which no one else could get again. So that would be like, we were part of the early bird club type of vibe. So anyone who participates at all and plays over their period of time for a decent number of the days would be able to get that. There would be potentially a skin for a hero. We're kind of talking about that. One of the heroes that you actually get through the missions. So that could be pretty cool. Again, we're thinking for it to be exclusive for people that participate in this event. There would also be almost like a bit of a drop of goodies for people that participated as well for when we actually launch the game. So that could include things like the Aether Crystals, which is our version of summoning in the game. It could be like an early level like gear drop. It could be energy gold to upgrade stuff, like all of those type of, softer currencies in the game, plus, a little bit of a head start in terms of, a few pools, a few champion pools and that type of thing. What we don't want to do though is drop, 5 legendaries or something crazy like that, which just means that everybody else is miles behind you at the start. So we're still playing around with what that looks like, but ultimately we want it to be a cool package, and certainly the people that finish higher might get, in terms of this competition, we'll get something very cool as well. So we're still playing around with that side of it, the rewards, but ultimately there will be rewards for you, both in terms of cosmetics and goodies for kind of like a launch experience.
Yay, rewards! Well, cosmetic rewards. Take note that these rewards that he's mentioned are just ideas at this stage. Just remember that. Yeah, it makes sense to give everyone who participates a kind of early bird reward, like a unique portrait that can't be achieved anywhere else, or perhaps a hero skin, like he mentioned. Giving out rewards, like cosmetic rewards, will incentivize as many people as possible who have signed up to actually take part in the experience. In case it wasn't clear, this cache of goodies that he mentioned, that they're tossing around as an idea, it would be something that you claim once the game goes live, once it releases. Just a little something extra that you find in your inbox to kick off your adventure in the early release of the game. Incentivizing people to not only take part, but to do their utmost to be one of the top players. As he mentioned, extra rewards for those who score well or become the top players during this alpha period. I think that's really smart from a data collection point of view, because the more people you have competing to hit the top, the further people are actually going to go, and the more valuable data you're going to get in terms of those things mentioned earlier with the flow, where you might find that there are overpowered combos or underpowered champions and things like that. So the data from that is going to be really valuable, and incentivizing it in such a way where the top performers are going to get something really incredible. So many people are going to want to try to be those top performers.
So I guess the last thing to call out here is, we want this experience to be hard, right? So we're not expecting everybody to hit, floor 150 and then start to fight the final boss. We're expecting it to be possible to do that, but we're not expecting everyone to be able to do that, because there will be like areas where you have to go back and empower your heroes to really be able to overcome things. You'll have to pull together the right type of team comps to be able to beat challenges. We want for that to be your experience, so that we can see where players are struggling, where players are finding it too easy, and that type of thing. But also, because we want it to be a challenge, right? We don't want it to be just like this easy experience that everyone just blows through. Now, if 10,000 people actually do beat the tower, they'll get to a final boss, and the final boss will be a unlimited damage experience, which still gives us then that tiering of competitive gameplay, right? So it'll be like, damn, who's actually able to beat this sort of scaling damage boss who ultimately can't die? And then it'll be a case of who got the most damage in their runs.
Yeah, that's great. We need this experience to be challenging. They need it to be challenging to gather the right kind of data about the game and how it plays. It stands to reason that you won't be able to just pull 4 amazing champions and zerg your way up to the final floor. You'll be expected to give everything some thought and to make choices and learn along the way in order to progress and proceed through the tower, through the experience. The idea of a scaling boss is also really cool. The way he explained it, it sounds like the boss is going to be unkillable. Maybe a health pool that doesn't shift at all, or when its HP reaches 0, it just keeps fighting you, a bit like the clan boss in Raid Shadow Legends. And the more the battle wears on, the stronger the boss gets, hitting your team harder and harder. In this instance, if it's unlimited, even the most godlike team is just going to get wiped out eventually, right? So it becomes a question of who can outdamage everybody else. Also, I wonder if there'll be limited attempts against the boss or on any of the floors due to resource costs to attempt a floor, or actually how that's going to work in terms of resource management for the floors and going back to earlier floors. And of course, when I and you get to the top floor and attempt the final boss, whether we'll have limited attempts against that boss in order to secure our name in the Hall of Fame.
And I guess the cool thing is we're only building out features that we need for like the final release anyway. We need that type of boss mechanic that you can get unlimited damage against. You know, we need the tower experience. Anything like drops are just things that happen within our game engine anyway. So, you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff we're building here which just needs to happen, right? And we just think this will be a more fun experience and way of kind of like, you know, giving you guys that type of gameplay experience.
Yeah, everything here that he said, it makes sense, right? They're not just building a mini-game experience to gather data to improve the shape of the game as a whole, but they're building a game area that will be a core part of the final game. We are going to have a blast testing the game inside this tower, just as we'll have a great time heading back into the tower on release as part of our gameplay loop. And all of the mechanical things like heroes with defined skills, armor, weapons, resources, and empowering and improving them. All of these things are core to the gaming experience, and they need to be done for the alpha and therefore the final product to be successful. I hope you enjoyed this video and all of the information that Simon was kind enough to share with us regarding this upcoming alpha experience. Go sign up at fateless.gg if you haven't already, and I hope to see you when the tower experience goes live in July. Thank you for watching.